Rome fell in 476 AD, marking the end of one of the most well-known empires from history. Today, I tried to continue their great legacy by attempting to form the Third Rome in 1936. But how was I going to achieve this? Wow, the path to forming this great nation lies in the Soviet Union. So stick around to the end to see just how successful I will become after completing this challenge. The first order of business was to do the focus beaten but not defeated, as this would allow us to work our way back up to being a monarchy. We would then need to work our way down to embrace the Black Hundreds, as this would allow us to build up support in Siberia, allowing us to eventually trigger a civil war where we will not be completely outgunned by the Soviets. And because I would never keep you guys waiting, triggering the civil war is exactly what I did. Isn't it beautiful? And now all we have to do is purge communism from my lands. However, I wouldn't be able to do this alone, because I'm terrible at the game. So, throughout the entire time when I was preparing for this war, I had also been making concessions to the Japanese in the form of Vladivostok and that island we have that is on the border with Japan, so that when the war happened, I would have their complete assistance. So, with the combined forces of the Revolutionary Army and the Japanese, I began to push Stalin back. And what's more, as I began to take more and more land, I also began to start accepting the Soviet deserters into my ranks, bolstering my own front line whilst simultaneously crippling Stalin's. There really isn't anything else to say about this civil war though, because it was surprisingly easy. I just pushed and pushed and pushed, and eventually Stalin capitulated, allowing me to form the Russian Empire once more. I did however have to clean up a couple of the breakaway states, but honestly that was light work, and then once they were all cleaned up, I was able to finish my first step towards becoming the Third Rome. And if you've made it this far into the video, which is only about 2 minutes, but hey ho, I'll give you a little fun fact about me. In England, we have GCSEs. You have to do an English language GCSE where you speak to your teacher about a certain topic for like a couple minutes or whatever, and you get like a pass merit distinction. I chose to do mine on the Third Rome. I got a merit if anyone was interested, because it was too short, but yeah, little fun fact about me there. Anyways, back to the game now. As you can see, I've been dragged into another war against the English, the French, the Polish and the Baltic nations by my overlord Japan. Normally, this absolutely would not be an issue. However, as I had just gotten out of a civil war, the number of divisions at my disposal had rapidly decreased, so I had to be very careful about who I chose to prioritise in this war. I chose to first prioritise the Baltics, with the hope of reducing the strain on Germany, our ally, because of Japan, who had just descended into a civil war. As expected, the Baltics got smoked, so I then chose to prioritise the Polish, and I'll be honest, they went out really quickly as well. I think the reason why I thought these nations would take far longer to defeat is because I'm so used to fighting when it's 1944 or 1945, and so because we're fighting so early on in the game, these nations haven't actually had the time to improve their industries and templates and their divisions and whatever, so they were really easy to take out as the Soviet Union. Wow. As the Russian Empire, who was once the Soviet Union. I then cleaned up all the German Empire and the final breakaway states that had declared independence in the Civil War. None of them were even close to being a threat to me, I'm going to be honest with you. They had no industry, they had no army. The German Empire was already on its knees, so it was very easy business. For some reason, a peace deal was also triggered, so I tried to take all of the Baltics. I then discovered I was poor, and could only afford Estonia, while Germany just consumed all of its neighbours. I'd never seen something so greedy in my life, because I really wanted the Baltics, because I'm pretty sure that the Russian Empire had them historically, along with pretty much all of Poland. But no, I was not allowed. The German Reich said no to me. As this had slightly inconvenienced me, I chose to obliterate an entire civilization. But honestly, it felt good in the moment, but then I had to, waste manpower and equipment garrisoning it, so it just felt a bit of an ask, to be honest with you. I also finally dealt with the other breakaway states. I can't really remember why it took me so long to deal with them, but hey ho, that's life, and more importantly, I then clicked the final focus that allowed me to form the Third Rome, the whole point of this video. And there it was. My work here is now done. At least, that's what you thought I was going to say. No, we still had a war to win. I continued my subjugation of the breakaway states, and most importantly, prepared to go to war with the Italians. They held Rome, and I wanted it at any cost. And low-key, this was my first difficult war. Like, that's the reason this video has gone so fast. Everyone has just died as soon as I looked in their direction. Amazing for when I'm recording it, terrible for when I'm trying to make content out of it. Anyway, The Italians had crammed a lot of divisions in not a lot of space on mountain tiles, so it was actually really difficult to dislodge them, even with the assistance that came from my Cass. However, I did eventually have some victories in the north, allowing me to eventually pierce the enemy front lines and outflank a fair few Italian divisions. I then logged off for the day, and when I re-logged on for the next day, there were massive holes in the enemy front line. I don't really know why this happened, but you know for sure I monopolised on this bug, making sure that my troops pierced right through the Italian lines, cutting the country in half and forming the Regno del Sud. And now that the Regno del Sud had been formed, Italy's collapse was imminent. Also, I didn't know this, but when the Regno del Sud is formed, all Italian puppets are given their independence, so Yugoslavia managed to escape my wrath, which was actually quite annoying, because I really wanted to gobble them all up, but no, they just got to escape down to I don't know, a loophole in the peace deal systems. Anyway, now that Italy had died, it was time to kill France. Thankfully, however, Germany had already managed to brute force their way through the Maginot, so I just shoved my troops into that opening in order to keep pressuring the already deorganised French divisions. And low-key, it worked out really well. For some reason, the French had just refused to cover their new front line, allowing me to walk all the way up to Paris and then to also take Paris. I don't know why the French were acting so stupid in this game, because this was the freest invasion of France I've ever had. Even when I played Germany, I've not had the invasions of France be this easy. The French then made their capital Calais, so I chose to pull a Dunkirk on them. However, getting the encirclement proved to be really difficult, so I chose to outflank their front line by moving through the Benelux region. Yeah, they really didn't put up much of a fight, I'm going to be honest with you. I just absolutely destroyed them. They're pretty much the trend with this save file is me just dominating. I also managed to encircle Calais, which was very nice, and I'm going to be honest with you, sometimes with these save files I get stuck in a stalemate, so I go and do this other thing, but then I forget why I've done it. So for instance here, I went and invaded Belgium so I could take Calais, but in all my other saves I would just forget the need to take Calais and just be like, oh, yay, we took out Belgium, now to focus on the south instead or something. So I was actually really proud of myself for remembering the original reason as to why I invaded Belgium. Anywho, that's enough yapping. Since France still has the national spirit disjointed government, they quickly capitulated, allowing me to then finish off the Danish as a side quest, and then prepare for the final naval invasion of England. I was not messing around for this naval invasion. I built ports, researched expensive air, and trained my navies. My first attempt at obtaining naval dominance did not go well. I had spent 2 years building up my fleets and they just got demolished like it was nothing, and I was sent running back to the drawing board. But I ain't a quitter. So, the next plan I cooked up was simple and perfect. I was to build hella naval bombers and to train up hella marines. And it actually worked. I immediately got enough dominance and was able to send off both of my invasions, and once I made landfall, it was time to take some victory points. This invasion had cost me my entire navy, so I had to make this one count. And in the beginning I did. I cut England in half and very little stood in my way. However, I had forgotten that this was a 1946 England that I was dealing with, and 1946 Englands actually defend their home islands with a hell of a lot of troops. I tried to reinforce my lines however I could, but since I had lost dominance in the channel, my troops refused to cross it. Furthermore, since I had lost the dominance, I also could not get supply into the island, so I was gradually whittled down by the UK till I was forced off of their island back into the sea. This was the end of my campaign. While my air force and army stood strong, my navy was in shambles. I could not pull off another naval invasion even if I wanted to. It would take at least another 5 years of rebuilding my navy to rival what the Brits had. And that just was not happening, unfortunately. I would like to thank all of you for watching, and for getting to the end of this video, I would like to reward all of you with a picture of my dog. And before anybody comments, yes, I am pimping my dog out. His name is Scout, he's very lovely, and you should all drop a like.